What's up, everybody? It's Joey from the DFS Dose, and we finally made it. NFL Week 1 starts in four days, and I couldn't be more excited. But before we get into what I'm going to be breaking down in this video for you guys, and you might be able to see it on the screen, I just got to talk to you guys real quick. So there's probably a good chance that you're new to the DFS Dose channel on YouTube. There's probably a good chance that you don't know who I am. So as I said, my name is Joey. I am part of the DFS Dose, and we are a daily fantasy sports podcast. Myself and my co-host, Ben Hover, which you can find him on Twitter at Ben Hover, and he will also be releasing videos on this channel. So what you can expect from us is a weekly breakdown on the Millie Maker from me, and then Ben will be breaking down his favorite cash game options specifically for Draftkings. We talk about FanDuel here and there, but Ben and myself are mainly Draftkings players when it comes to NFL DFS. So that's what we're going to be focusing on with this YouTube channel. And I will note, we are doing a giveaway on our Twitter at the DFS Dose. And all you have to do to be entered into the giveaway is retweet the tweet that I have linked in the description and be subscribed to this channel. And you can potentially win $50. And we will announce the winner of the $50 giveaway on our Monday episode, where we will recap week 1 of the NFL DFS slate on Draftkings. If you want to get to know us better, you can follow us on Twitter at the DFS Dose. And if you are interested in listening to us break down each slate in an audio format, maybe you're on your car ride to work, or you're at the gym, or whatever you may be doing cleaning the house, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, SoundCloud, any podcast site. If you have a specific podcast site that you use, the DFS Dose is on there. And you can expect a full week 1 NFL breakdown coming out each and every single Thursday for the entire NFL season. So that's 4 months straight of podcasts. And then we will also be releasing a recap episode every single Monday for the entire season. So 2 podcasts every single week on the audio platforms. And I think we're going to be releasing 2 to 3 YouTube videos per week for all of our YouTube guys. Now, I don't know if we're going to put the entire podcast on YouTube. I think we still have to discuss that. So we might end up doing that. But other than that, this is a brand new channel. I would like if you guys could hit that subscribe button one time. Leave a couple comments down below on your favorite plays for NFL Week 1. I personally respond to all comments, or I try my best to respond to all comments. I like engaging with our audience. So if you wouldn't mind, just feel free to hit that subscribe button, leave a like on the video, and maybe recommend this video to your friends. It helps us out a lot. And like I said, if you're subscribed, you'll be entered into the $50 giveaway if you go and retweet the tweet in the description down below. So if you're new to DFS, if you're new to the DFS Dose YouTube channel, like I mentioned earlier, we are a daily fantasy sports podcast. So we give our takes and our best analysis on each and every NFL DFS slate in hopes of providing you guys, a better chance to be a profitable player on Draftkings or FanDuel, depending on which site you play. And that is the goal with these videos from Ben and myself. We're going to hopefully give you guys the information that you're looking for and, put you on to maybe some guys that you weren't considering prior to watching these videos for the Millionaire Maker on Draftkings. So if you're not familiar, if you're a new DFS player, the Millionaire Maker is a contest that Draftkings runs every single week of the NFL season. And it's usually a $20 entry First place wins, obviously, $1 million. It's called the Millionaire Maker. So one person will become a millionaire off of a $20 buy-in, which is crazy. Like, I don't know what I would do if I won $1 million playing something that I love. I would be so ecstatic. But I'm here to potentially help one of you guys watching maybe have a better chance to win $1 million. I'm going to give my takes, give my analysis, give my favorite stacks to target in this tournament. But before we get into the whole player analyzation and the stack analyzation, I think it's important to do your research on said contest before entering into it, before blindly throwing away $20. Now, because it's already a negative EV, a negative expected value contest. It's basically a lottery, 120,000 entries, usually 140,000 entries, and you have to hit the absolute nuts for that specific week. And it's tough to hit the nuts. You have to get every single play right. If you don't play that defense that scores 30 points, you're not winning it. If you're not playing, that cheap running back that is 5% owned, that goes off for 25 points, you're most likely not going to win it unless you have somebody of equal value scoring that same amount of points. So it's a tough contest. And I would advise anybody playing DFS to do their research on the contest that you're entering into before you enter into them. And Ben and myself go in depth about it on our intro to NFL DFS podcast, which you can go and find on the DFS Dose podcast feed, as I mentioned on all those podcast sites, where we explain what you should be doing, why you should be playing, and some goals you should have set for yourself in NFL when playing DFS. Okay. So we are going to look at Adam Levitan's of the Establish the Run. He put out, obviously, as you could see on the screen, winning DraftKings Millie Maker trends. Now, I think he does this article every single year, and I read it every single year. And, as a content creator, I'm always going to look to other content creators to see what they're putting out, as it could, be very beneficial to my process and, potentially help me become a better player and win $1 million essentially. So this is a must read article for anybody, and we're just going to go over it for a couple minutes. I want to get you guys acquainted with how you should be building your Millie Maker lineups. Now, I already have a good sense of how you should be building them, but like I said, if you're a new player, you might not know who to roster. You might think that ownership matters a lot, or, you might have this notion where saving salary or not using your entire $50,000 salary will make you contrarian. In this article, Adam Levitan goes all over that. So the article will be linked down in the description below. I don't want to take any credit away from Levitan's work. He's one of the best fantasy analysts in the entire fantasy community. Great article. So all credit goes to him on this. I am just using it to provide it to you guys. It is a free article, although I am subscribed to Establish the Run. It is a free article. You can go and look it up. So let's just talk about this article real quick. So number one, like I just mentioned, there's no edge in leaving money on the table. So you'll hear a lot of people that say you should not spend the full 50K cap because that's what everyone does. The data doesn't agree. Okay, so among the last 452 top 10 finishers, 48% have used the entire salary cap. So what that means is you essentially want to use the entire 50,000. You will be above the field in doing so, and you gain no edge from not using your entire salary. Like, say you might find it sharp to leave $1,000 on the board, or $500 or $600 or whatever the case may be. the data suggests that you should be trying to use your entire salary cap to get a better shot at finishing inside the top 10 entries for the Millie Maker. And then as you can see, here's some stats right here. 48% use 50K of the salary cap, 24% use 49.9, and 11% use 49.8. So that's roughly about 85% of the entire field is using 49.800K or more in their salaries. So you essentially gain no edge in using a lesser salary, as you could see here. Only 9% of top 10 teams use a tight end in the flex. Now, this is a big thing. I know we've talked about it a lot on the DFS Dose podcast, and and we talk about how some weeks it'd be good to go with double tight ends, but as we can see, only 9% of top 10 teams used a tight end in the flex. Now, the reason for that is because tight ends just don't have the ceiling like running backs or wide receivers do. You're not going to see tight ends go off for 25, 30 points like you're going to see running backs go off for 25, 30, like you're going to see wide receivers go off for 35, 40. That's essentially why you do not want to play a tight end, is because a tight end is usually a guy that is not going to lead the team in targets. They're not going to be the most talented player in the receiving corps usually, besides maybe a Travis Kelce or George Kittle, okay? And so you're going to want to target the wide receivers while, they could sit around 6 to 8 targets. There's wide receivers whose upside is larger because maybe of the offense that they're playing in, or they're a deep threat for their specific team, like a McCole Hardman or Will Fuller, whose ceilings are crazy because they have that big play ability. You're gonna want to roster those guys in your flex spot instead of tight end. So if you're considering going double tight end, I don't hate it, especially if you can find a cheap value tight end in a great matchup, like maybe like a 3,400 guy, and it allows you to pay up to a Christian McCaffrey or Lamar Jackson or Michael Thomas. So with all that being said, essentially I will never be playing a tight end in the flex because I obviously am prioritizing ceiling in a contest where you have to finish in first place to get a majority of the money in said contest. So I'm only looking for ceiling, and tight ends just do not have the same ceiling that running backs and wide receivers do. It's just a sad truth. All right, so point number 3, stacking. Stacking is an important strategy in best ball. You can stack in redraft, and stacking is very important in DFS in any sport. You want to stack in these large field contests to give your team correlation, okay? Correlation between a pass catcher and their quarterback. Because if a quarterback goes off or if a team goes off, there's probably a high chance that the leading wide receiver on said team went off as well if the team is scoring 40 points in a hypothetical matchup. Say, for example, Matt Ryan goes off for 450 yards and 5 touchdowns. There's a good chance that Julio Jones, the main guy on the Falcons, the main wide receiver, the alpha, is going to have a good game if Matt Ryan has a standout game like that. So if Matt Ryan goes for 450 and 5, there's a solid chance that Julio goes for 150 and 2 touchdowns, which is a 30-point day on Draftkings. So you're always going to be looking to correlate your teams. You just want to have that correlation. And as we can see here, all Millie Maker entries went naked QB, aka 0 teammates of a quarterback, a whopping 17% of the time. But top 10 lineups went naked quarterback just 6.4% of the time. So the people that are consistently finishing in the top 10 in the Millie Maker are stacking their quarterbacks with their quarterback's pass catchers. Maybe one wide receiver, two wide receivers. As you can see, the 11% disparity between the total entries and the top 10 finishes is severely high. So you're going to want to stack your team. And then if we look at the second paragraph, top 10 lineups use the quarterback and two of his teammates 41% of the time, while the field did it 28%, essentially 29% of the time. So if you want to go and read the entire article, I will have the link in the description down below. Like I mentioned earlier, shout out to Adam Levitan for putting together that article. It's a very useful article, especially if you're looking to enter the Millie Maker contest. I originally recorded me going over all 11 points that he put in the article, and the video was just way too long, so I had to cut it down to 3 points. And like I said, if you want to go and look at it, I would advise you read that article before you watch this video, or the rest of this video I should say. But if you don't want to, I'm going to get right into my Draftkings stacks for week 1, my favorite stacks for week 1. So let's get it. Starts now. I'm just going to outline, 2, 3, maybe 4 of my favorite stacks and give you guys the reasoning behind that. So one of my favorite stacks for week 1, with all things considered, is Josh Allen. And then if we go over to wide receiver, we can find Stafford Diggs. And then I would also include John Brown in here. Okay. So Josh Allen is a quarterback where you might not get elite throwing production out of him. He is not the best passer in the NFL. I'll just put that on record. I don't like Josh Allen as a real life quarterback personally. But I will say he is a great fantasy quarterback, and it's because of what he can do right here with his legs. He has rushing upside. He was the number 1 quarterback in terms of rushing touchdowns for quarterbacks. He was number 2 in rushing yards, behind obviously Lamar Jackson for the quarterback position. If Josh Allen can improve on his passing ability going into year 3 with the best set of skill position players he's had in his young career, with the receivers that I plugged into the lineup, the sky's the limit for Josh Allen. And that's not even talking about his matchup, which is at home against the Jets. Now, I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with the NFL. Hopefully you have. But the Jets traded Jamal Adams to Seattle. CJ Mosley, their top linebacker, one of the best linebackers in the NFL, opted out due to COVID. This is a secondary that is starting Pierre Desir, Bless Austin, never even heard of this dude, Bradley McDougall, certified scrub, and Marcus May, who I guess is alright. He's not a bad safety by any means. In their secondary, their front 7 is honestly just as bad as their secondary, with Quinnen Williams, Steve McLendon, Henry Anderson, who's alright, Jordan Jenkins, Avery Williamson, Neville Hewitt, and Terrell Basham. So that is their entire starting defense according to their depth chart on NewYorkJets.com. It's one of the worst defenses in the NFL. So I am going to take a shot on Josh Allen and Stafford Diggs and even John Brown in week 1 at home, going up against this terrible secondary. Stafford Diggs is one of the best deep catchers in the NFL, as he was top 3 in deep catching efficiency last year. He's one of the best route runners in the NFL, and as we can see last season with Kirk Cousins and an offense that ran the ball at one of the highest rates, he accessed his ceiling, a couple weeks in a row. I mean, 46 points is just an incredible ceiling for a guy like Stafford Diggs. And we saw him hit 23, 24, 26 points. And at 6.4K, what more can you ask for? Like, I'd be lit with 26 points out of him. And I mean, we see here John Brown with a 37-point game, 28-point game week 1 against the Jets last year. So these are players who have a realistic ceiling of 30 to 40 points going up against one of the worst secondaries in the NFL. One of my favorite stacks, if not my favorite stack for week 1. And I will say I have money on the Bills spread for week 1. I think this is just an utter domination game for Buffalo. I think the Jets are going to get ran out of the building. And I will say this is a stack where I feel you don't need to run it back. But if you're going to run it back, my preferred option, who most likely will be owned, is Chris Herndon at 3.3K. Now, if you're projecting the Bills to blow out the Jets like I am, that means the Jets are going to be in a negative game script and passing the ball a ton. And Chris Herndon has gotten so many good reports out of camp. He's the Jets starting tight end. He missed all of last year due to injury, but he is one of the up-and-coming young tight ends in the NFL. Playing him at tight end with a salary of 3.3K will allow you to spend up, to maybe get a higher priced running back, or maybe even 2, depending on where you go with your third wide receiver or your defense. So Chris Herndon is the guy that I'm looking to bring it back with that stack. Now, the second stack that I am going to discuss in this video, and it might be disgusting. Okay, I'm not here to get cute, get fancy. I'm here to try and help you guys hit some contrarian stacks and say some stacks that I like. And it's Gardner Minshew, and I would only play DJ Chark. And I will say, just off note real quick, and we'll probably touch on this on the podcast, this mid-range of wide receivers is where you're going to want to target. Like DJ Moore at 6.6, Adam Thielen 6.7, A-Rob 6.5, Diggs 6.4, Kenny Gallaudet 6.2, which is really, really low, and he's a clear-cut value. This is the range where you're going to want to target for week 1 for the wide receivers. And even Devontae at 7.3, he should at least be 8.5 in my opinion, going up against that Minnesota secondary. But a stack that I love for week 1 is Gardner Minshew and DJ Chark. Now, I will say the Jags project to be one of the worst teams in the NFL and have one of the worst offenses in the NFL. But, what will work in favor for Gardner Minshew is the negative game script. The Jaguars will be throwing the ball a ton week 1. And as we look here, Gardner Minshew does have some rushing upside, as we've seen him go over 30 rushing yards in a couple of these games, which provides, a solid 3 to 5 extra points. And then, we've seen him go off for 27, 24, 25 going up against the same Colts team that he went up against in week 17 of last year and put up 25.5 points at a 5.3 price tag. And that can win you $1 million in week 1. If a 5.8 quarterback goes off for 26, 28 points, he's getting that fire next to his name. And he's not going to have ownership. He's under 6K, which is obviously something that we highlighted in the beginning portion of this video. And you can play an elite wide receiver, I feel like, in DJ Chark with Gardner Minshew. DJ Chark is a guy that is a matchup nightmare. This is a guy who is 6'1", 6'2", runs a 4.3, great contested catch wide receiver, good route runner, obviously great speed. and we've seen him have a high ceiling. We saw last year with Gardner Minshew, 27 points in week 1 against the Chiefs, 39 points against Carolina, 33 points against the same Colts team. So we've seen him score over 30 points numerous amounts of times. So we know he has, 30 to 40 points in his potential range of outcomes. So for those reasons, Gardner Minshew to DJ Chark is one of my favorite stacks for week 1. I think DJ Chark is the alpha in the Jags offense, and he is going to get peppered with targets in 2020. So DJ Chark is a guy that I'm going to be targeting a lot, especially if his price stays in this $6K range. Now, I just want to go over a couple more stacks. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but a stack that I like is Matt Stafford and Kenny Gallaudet. I know I mentioned Kenny Gallaudet being too cheap, but Gallaudet is 6.2, and as we just saw, Stafford is 6.2. So both cheap prices on guys who are great fantasy players. Kenny Gallaudet led the NFL in receiving touchdowns last year and finished as a top 12 wide receiver, even with Matt Stafford only playing in 8 games last year before getting hurt. And, we can see here, we've seen Stafford go over 31, 32 points at a 5,200 price tag is incredible. So Stafford has a realistic ceiling, and same goes for Kenny Gallaudet. Kenny Gallaudet is a guy who we've seen score 28, 32, 26, 28 points, 28 against the same Chicago team. Now, I will say only 5 targets is incredible, 158 yards and a touchdown. It is incredible efficiency for Kenny Gallaudet, but this is a guy who is a complete mismatch for any secondary, for any cornerback, projecting him to keep on evolving into an elite wide receiver 1. And Stafford treats him as his mini Megatron. And as we can see here, the games that he played with Stafford last year, 9 targets, 10 targets, 9 targets, 8 targets, 8 targets, a weak game right here in 2. But you're not going to see many of those games as long as Stafford and Gallaudet are healthy. You're going to see him in the 10 target range. And I will say you can also include Marvin Jones in here for 5,500, who was also a solid wide receiver 2, and he is a contested catch guy, and he does realistically have some touchdown upside. And as we've seen him, like 43 points was the biggest fantasy day out of Marvin Jones and Kenny Gallaudet, going up against Minnesota, 10 catches, 4 touchdowns, which is obviously incredible efficiency. But Marvin Jones has access to a 30, 40 point ceiling with Stafford at the helm in Detroit. And with them, a lot of people are going to be turned off because they see this right here, 7th and in red. So they're not going to target the Lions, although, pretty much every single Lions player is a complete value in week 1. And I will know week 1 is essentially a crapshoot. It is a little bit tighter this year. The prices are tighter. Like, they increased the floor on running backs to 4K for week 1. I don't know if it's going to stay like that, but that'll keep some ownership in check on guys like Antonio Gibson, who are 4K. And, there hasn't been that many injuries, either due to COVID and the lack of training camp and mini camps and OTAs in the offseason. They only had 13 padded practices due to the CBA that was enacted this season. So there's not that many injuries and there's not that many values. I mean, there is value. We just have to find it. And I think Kenny Gallaudet has 6.2. And I know for sure Ben is going to have him in his video that comes out soon, detailing his favorite cash game plays. But I think he is a phenomenal tournament play as well, and he's one of my favorite guys at wide receiver. And like I mentioned, you're just going to want to stay in that 6,200 range. Now, some other guys that I like Carson Wentz. I like the Eagles going up against Washington, but I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you guys. I like to be transparent on who I'm playing. I don't really care if you guys know who I'm on, unless you're playing me in head-to-heads. Then I don't want you to know. But you could still see me in the head-to-head lobby. I'm open to all action. But I'm playing the Washington defense at $2,000 in my cash lineups. Their front seven is incredible. I think it's top 5 in the NFL. They drafted Chase Young at number 2 overall in the 2020 draft. Edge rusher out of Ohio State, who is a phenomenal player and should automatically bolster the Washington team's pass rush. And then they also, signed Ron Rivera as their head coach, who is a defensive head coach and should have them right. But with that being said, I love Carson Wentz, I love Miles Sanders, and I love Deshaun Jackson, who is only 4.9K. Let's scroll and find him. I can't find him. Where is he? I know he's 4.9. I love this stack right here. For tournaments, it's going to be owned. Carson Wentz might be the lowest owned guy out of these guys. I know Sanders and Djax are going to have ownership in week 1. And Djax week 1 is an automatic lock, I feel like. He goes off every week 1, as we saw last year against Washington. He put up 8 catches, 2 touchdowns, hit 38 points. And even though Djax is an old man, he still has the ability to reach those ceiling games that we want. And at 4.9K, it's hard to pass up on a guy that is going to be the Eagles wide receiver 1. And the only competition that Deshaun Jackson has in week 1 for targets is Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, who are both tight ends, who are both, middle of the field, short area reception guys. So that leaves Deshaun Jackson running the deep routes, and Carson Wentz is going to take a couple shots for Deshaun Jackson. So all it takes is one play, and he's paying off his price tag, a 70, 80-yard touchdown I'm talking about, and he's scoring 20-plus points. And, he might be 30% owned in the Millie Maker, 25% owned, but this is a guy that I don't think you can pass up on playing, and I would love to have him as my third wide receiver, even if I'm not playing Carson Wentz. And and then just going into Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders is also a guy who can catch the ball. Everybody in the fantasy community is projecting Sanders to step into a workhorse role as the Eagles forgoed drafting any running backs. They didn't sign any veteran running backs. So the only running backs in that room right now are Sanders and Boston Scott, and then Corey Clement, who we're really not worried about seeing the field at all. So if Miles Sanders can get 8 catches, and then with his 15 rushing attempts, we're looking at, a 24, 25, 26 touch game out of a player who is 6,300 in week 1 with receiving upside. And I would be shocked if he does not score over 20 points in week 1. So I love the Eagles stack. I love the Lions stack. And I absolutely love the Bills stack. I think I will have exposure to all of these guys. But I think that is going to wrap up the video. Like I mentioned at the top of this episode, this is a new series where Ben and myself are going to be breaking down tournament strategy and cash game strategy. Specifically, I will be breaking down the Million Maker tournament and my favorite stacks. Ben will be breaking down his favorite cash tiers, his favorite cash game plays every single week. You can expect those videos to come out on this DFS Dose YouTube channel every single week for the entire NFL season. If you're still watching, thank you. I appreciate it. Remember to hit that like button on this video if you find any value and anything that I said or went over. And also be sure to hit that subscribe button. And as I mentioned already like 2 or 3 times, the link to the giveaway will be down below. It's free. We're going to be giving out $50. We're going to announce it on the Monday episode of the DFS Dose coming out on the 14th. And thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. And, I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to me talk about my favorite stacks, and comment below who your favorite stacks are, and maybe, try and convince me that, one of these stacks isn't as good as one of your favorite stacks. I'm always open to a discussion, and I reply to every single comment. So go ahead and comment. Follow me on Twitter, which you can see on the screen, at Joey Carrion DFS. You could tweet me any questions you might have or any thoughts. I respond to everybody. I'm open to talking to anybody. So yeah, thank you guys. And I will see you guys again next week for my personal video. But you can always hear me talk on the DFS Dose podcast, which is coming out, a day after this. And then our recap episode every single Monday at the DFS Dose on all podcast platforms. Thank you guys for listening. Peace out.